Welcome, everyone. My name is Jukka, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the session that we're hosting today. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to cover how to measure and visualize human risk. Joining me today is Petri, who is the CISO advisor here at Hoxton. Petri, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone from the sunny Helsinki. I'm the Chief Information Security Advisor from or for Hoxhunt. I've been the CISO for the Nokia when it used to be the big handset manufacturer, and have been establishing the same function with NXP Semiconductors and working with Microsoft and few other companies. But happy to be here today.
And I'm Jukka, and I'm working very closely with the product teams here at Hoxton to share our security products with the world. Today, we'll be covering the following. We'll talk about the importance of measuring human risk, key metrics for measuring human risk, and of course, we need to address communicating human risk KPIs to the board.
Alrighty, so about the importance of measuring the human side of the cyber risk. Before I go exactly to that, let me explain to you how I usually actually build the framework for reporting of cybersecurity to the uppers management and in the corporation altogether. So next slide, please. Yes, so I believe that we CISOs are a bit like a kind of cyber doctors. We should be analyzing our patients in the same way as the real doctors do about the human beings. If they would take a kind of comprehensive look into the patient, they would start from the DNA, which of course defines that how your life is going to go about in many, many senses. It gives you the foundation. Same applies to the businesses. The foundation comes to the businesses that you are doing, defining, on my opinion, largely the investment level that you're going to have into the cyber. Then on top of the DNA, you can do a huge amount of great things. You can exercise, diet, sleep, do social activities, being very social with your people, which keeps you more healthy altogether. Of course, not guaranteeing that you are going to be always healthy. The same applies to the companies. The basis is with the capabilities. The better capabilities do you have for the cyber or for the kind of processes altogether, the more healthier your life is going to be. And then on top of that, of course, there is the daily habits. What are you doing on a daily basis? Are you patching your systems? Are you kind of cleaning up phishing emails? So what else you are kind of doing? And that applies then to the KPIs, which are, in my opinion, emerging from the capability maturity models also. I will dive a bit deeper into those later in the presentation. And then the last part, the contracted diseases. I still see some companies reporting the board of directors or the CXO level mostly about the diseases. But as you know, if you are getting a flu, that is not really defining how healthy you are altogether or how long are you going to be living. So, on my opinion, it's extremely important to have a kind of whole gamut of the reporting when you're reporting to your trusted partners or so. Then looking into the capability maturity, where, in my opinion, it still should be starting. This is not necessarily something that I would be anymore reporting to the board of directors. I once made that mistake, but anyway, the main thing was that the capability is developing quite slowly. And that's why I would be kind of mostly reporting the advancement of the KPIs. But when it comes to the capability maturity that you should, as a CISO, obviously be following up, I would kind of nowadays classify the people, processes, and technology, the old triangle that we have for ages used in our industry. And then, of course, having the sub-segments underneath of that, so that you see that you are also building your capabilities, your foundation to be extremely strong. And yeah, I just said it, people, processes, and technology. From the processes point of view, it's like the crisis management process or vulnerability management process or so. Technologies, you have heap load of technologies that you could measure how well they are kind of producing what they are expected to produce. But on a people side, where I think we have really not been investing that much in the past, we should be looking into that. How do we really engage them to be part of your active protection? Not just training them. Training is kind of one way, but being aware of you being one day possibly getting a heart disease usually is not actually changing your behavior or preventing that at all. So how do you engage? How do you change the behavior of the people so that they will be there to report the cases, giving your back-end processes in security the opportunity of cleaning the shit out of the system before it becomes really shitty?
I think that's so well put. And when we think about today's cybersecurity landscape, human error is the leading cause of cybersecurity breaches, responsible for up to 95% of breaches, according to the 2021 IBM Cybersecurity Intelligence Index report. So human-based attacks work because humans are unpredictable, easily influenced, and much more prone to mistakes. All these aspects that are used by social engineering, right? So I think these results reveal the shortcomings of solutions like traditional security awareness training, for example. Companies have long used programs on the SAT, security awareness training side, to educate employees to be vigilant looking for attacks, but awareness alone isn't enough to inspire true behavior change. So, in fact, even if you have a company that's super aware, there are statistics where 69% of employees admit to intentionally bypassing the company's cybersecurity guidance during the past year. So awareness doesn't really help in those cases. Well, as a result of, let's say, call it underinvestment into the people side, we know that human-based attacks pose the greatest threat. But many companies suffer from that gap where cyber attacks or cyber attackers are exploiting the humans because there's unaddressed human risk. And I think this jeopardizes the CISO's total risk reduction efforts. The best way to address this gap is to understand your current human-based risk and identify the areas where you can improve. Unfortunately, measuring human risk in a quantifiable way isn't easy. Getting the full picture requires continuous testing and continuous measurement of many different metrics. Most teams don't have the tools or resources to properly measure it. Nevertheless, CISOs and security teams need to try to measure it so that they can understand it, so that once they understand it, they can take action to reduce human cyber risk. All right, let's get to one of the main points. How do you begin to track human risk? There's a lot of different metrics out there, but to understand human risk in a constructive way, there's a few that we need to pay attention to it. And let's start with a focus on phishing training, which typically has been one of those key ways to address protection against social engineering attacks. So if you've been doing phishing training, security awareness training, these might be traditional phishing metrics that you're familiar with. We have the failure rate, so how many people do an unsafe action like clicking on a phishing campaign email. We have the pass rate, so people who didn't click, so we don't know what they did, but at least they didn't fail. And then we have the reporting rate, so people who took the correct action, if you will, so they reported the actual phishing campaign. Well, with these traditional phishing metrics, let's discuss how they fall short. So the failure rate, it's not necessarily indicative of the training success, right? You can manipulate that by sending easier phishing simulations. So if that campaign is very easy for everyone that's participating, it's more likely that you get a lower failure rate. Then again, if you suddenly send a very difficult phishing simulation, that's going to increase your fail rate. So it's not really taking into account individual skill and where people are at with their knowledge and awareness and ability to spot phishing emails. Then we have the pass rate. The pass rate, the way it falls short is it doesn't really consider users who don't engage with the training. So we know that they didn't fail, but why? Did they ignore that email because they don't have time? Were they out of office? Did they just think about like, oh, I'm gonna return to that email later on? We don't know how these people would necessarily act when they're faced with a real attack or another simulation that is of the same nature, difficulty. So we lose the insight into how these people actually fare with real social engineering attacks. Then we have the reporting rate. Well, this is great. So we know that people are taking the correct action, but it doesn't really prioritize the engagement enough. We know that this time when we sent this campaign, they reported it. But we want to see them being consistent in the actions that they take, because this is the one that really matters. We want people reporting.
Excellent. Thanks, Jukka, for explaining what it has traditionally been. And I don't think that there is a kind of huge difference on a headline level, but it's much more about the attitude, how you should be kind of looking into these numbers. Let me pick on something. You partially, of course, already covered it, but the miss rate in yellow with this graph shows nicely how actually people are getting more and more engaged over the time. In the beginning, there's like 40% of people who are not interested about these exercises. They are just kind of deleting them. But after 4 years of exercises, the amount of people who are not actually interested is less than 20%. Yeah, still there is like 20%, but that's pretty damn good kind of achievement. Mirror to that is actually the success rate, where at the end of 4 years process, which is, by the way, based on about 2 million users using the solution, the success rate, i.e. people actively reporting the simulations, but also the real threats, is more than 80%. And that's, in my opinion, extremely good number. One part of the secret sauce, in my opinion, is the frequency. So as you can see, over the 4 years, 140 exercises. That means that the people are receiving exercises almost on a weekly basis, keeping them kind of on their toes, but specifically building a muscle to understand if something really contextually belongs to you or not. Yeah. Then I mentioned shortly already on a previous slide about the real reporting rate. After a year, usually when people are kind of, or when the companies are bringing the people into the exercise of ours, around 60% of the people is reporting a real threat. And let me repeat, it's a real attack that passes through your traditional protections. Not many actually immediately even captures this one. It is not just a game. It is not just the kind of phishing simulations. When you train your people extremely well, they will deliver you results for your security operating center to be able to clean the systems fast enough. Fast enough leads to the last point in this slide, which says the average time to report. In our cases, after a year, the fastest 5% is reporting these real cases to the security operating center in somewhere between 55 to 61 seconds. And that kind of gives the time for the SOC to react in time. Microsoft recently actually made a study, and they say that it's in average takes 1 hour and 12 minutes to start the lateral movement after the first breach. So there is no ample time after the first minute, but yes, there is at least some time. Then the one in the middle, engagement rate. If you are capable of getting where the previous slide showed you that more than 80% of people who are really engaged, that obviously increases your probability of people reporting quickly, even faster than the 55 seconds. So the larger your crowd is, the better your crowdsourced engine obviously is.
So here's an example of what can be accomplished if you don't fixate on the traditional metrics like click rates, but rather engage with the new and focus on the new ways of measuring success. For a customer, Bird and Bird, the metric they look at the most is miss rate, because they want their people always actively reporting and looking for anything suspicious. So through the efforts of Bird and Bird engaging their users, they were able to get those 60% of their organization reporting real threats from the inboxes, and they were able to increase the threats reported in their month from 60 to 900.
Let me actually comment about the 60 to 900, because that might be scary to some CISOs. That how on earth can we actually deal that with the security operating center? What is not in the slide deck is a case study about the Avanade, where they actually had 154 cases reported on a daily basis to their SOC by the end users. But after engaging our kind of crowdsourced system, but also the AI that is constantly cultivated based on the crowd's intelligence, to filter actually that what cases really should be escalated to the SOC, they moved from the 154 to 6 a day, saving several SOC analyst FTEs on a daily basis, being capable of actually moving them to do something much more important than reading someone else's emails. But yeah, let's not overdo that one. But let's move into the kind of how would I do kind of the board reporting on the human side of these things. So you already saw this, but let's have a kind of recap. It's a people, process, and technology. And as I already said, it's about the KPIs, in this case about the people. So let's move on to see what's the KPIs. For the CXO or board level, I think they are kind of in many cases very willing to see only one number, a kind of index number. But the index number without breaking it down to anything rational doesn't usually make any sense. You need to understand where is it really coming from. In our case, we have kind of breaking it down from the culture and engagement competencies and real threat detection kind of components, which obviously then have the subcomponents underneath of them. These are the components. I wouldn't report to the board of directors. They would be the details, or the details that we actually just discussed in the previous slides there. But of course, the CISO team needs to understand them. With this index number, it is just something that you are kind of capable of measuring yourself up against your previous experience, or your previous kind of run rate or so, and against your peer companies that are using the same way of measuring. And there are hundreds of companies who are already using this way of measuring their success in the area. Then, as already kind of alluded, yes, you can see it over the time. That's kind of clear, and you can measure yourself against, for example, a global average there. The next thing, obviously, is to understand that where is this development coming from. So it is not only about reporting upwards. I'm always thinking about reporting as a kind of hour class. There is kind of the upper side of the hour class where you are reporting the one number, the index number, and maybe some components around of it to your board of directors and CXO level or so. But this sort of level, which is the lower part of the hour class, is extremely important for you to be able to redirect your forces and think that where do I need to have the action to? Which team in which location is, for example, having the lowest scores? Why do they have the lowest scores? What I want to highlight here is that we shouldn't ever charge immediately. We should always study a bit that why is it so that in that specific team there is a kind of low number. There can be really kind of reasonable and rational reasons for it. I have, for example, together with one of our customers, we analyzed that why does certain teams mostly accumulate the biggest number of the virus outbreaks with them. And the main reason was that those teams who are kind of accumulating the number, they are working in the customer front or in the front of talking directly with the certain suppliers, i.e. they don't have a opportunity of doing anything else but clicking to open attachments that are sent to them. So you shouldn't charge the people to be ignorant or so. You should understand why do they have the low number. When they have the low number, you start to think that do I need to invest? Do I need to train? What is the way of treating the people and helping them?
We've now learned of what are these metrics that you should be focusing on, and what can you then take as an outcome to deliver forward as a reportable number to your board and forward. Well, we had a benchmark case study with AES where what they did was they focused on the metrics that matters and the methodologies that work. When they were using Hoxton versus three other leading security awareness training tools, they noticed that they were measurably able to reduce their human risk. Ryan Boulay, who works as the VP and Chief Information Security Officer at AES, they didn't just want to eliminate risk. They wanted to carefully measure the results over time, and they wanted to prove that Hoxhunt was a justified investment that could take them forward. As we can see here, after just 3 months, they were able to see that Hoxhunt, with the frequent training, was able to bring the reporting rate up, failure rate down, and the miss rate also down. So people were much more engaged.
You got really good points. Let me actually say something about the AES. I don't think that every one of you know the company by heart immediately. At least I didn't know them prior to this experience with them. They're actually one of the Fortune 500 companies working in the critical infrastructure, delivering the power services to the world. And in that sense, I think that is extremely interesting. Interesting also in that sense that this company had used multiple competing solutions in advance. I think that during the last 5 years, they had tested 2 or 3 other kind of vendors, and they had almost lost their hope that is this just for training for compliance. And then after that, seeing these sort of kind of results that you see in this slide, it's just bloody phenomenal. And it's not the only customer. I could tell multiple stories like this, and this is actually the reason why I'm working for this company. I truly believe that we make a real dent. We really make an impact. I choose Hoxhunt, not the other way around.
That's great, Petri. And I think it's worth highlighting as well that because they were diligent and they looked for the correct solution, Ryan and the team at AES were recognized as an honoree at the 2023 CSO 50 Awards.
Yep.
So fantastic. Congratulations to them.
Absolutely. Great achievement, yes. Excellent. We are coming to the end of this show, so to say. Not a show, but anyway, some sort of Teams call also. If you want to know more, there is these 2 kind of studies that we have conducted at some stage. We will for sure commit of making the new versions out available for you in the future. But obviously, would be really happy to discuss with your CISOs, understanding your challenges and how we can help. I'm not limited absolutely to the Hoxhunt solutions only. I'm willing to listen to your CISOs and his worries, helping with the strategic ponderations, and then we'll see what comes out of it.